Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Elyssa Pompa, and I'm the Program Officer at the Greenbelt Fund. I'm hosting on behalf of Kathy McPherson, who, as you may know, is the Vice President of Research and Policy at the Greenbelt Foundation and the Vice President of Strategy and Programs for the Greenbelt Fund. She was unable to attend today as she's currently presenting at the Greenbelt Council. Today's webinar is focused on municipal initiatives that support the agricultural system. We partnered today with the Greenbelt Fund, the Greenbelt Foundation, and the Greater Golden Horseshoe Food and Farming Alliance. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Carolyn Pewterbaugh. Carolyn has worked with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs since 2009, and her current role is an agricultural and rural economic development advisor. She holds a Bachelor of Science in agricultural degree from the University of Guelph, and she's also a member of the Economic Development Council of Ontario. And she has an economic development training from the University of Waterloo. So we're very excited to have her moderating this webinar. Carolyn, you can take it away from here.
Oh, there. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. We're so happy that you could join today to take part in this webinar. And I'm really pleased to be able to introduce our panelists that will present on today's session. And they're going to provide some really great examples of how you can support the agricultural system within your communities, wherever you're from. So we have Anna DeMarchi-Meyers. She works in Halton region as the Ag Liaison Officer, and she will be kicking us our panel presentation off today. Then we have Stephanie Slaman, who works actually out of BC, and we'll be talking about some of the programs that they deliver in that province. And then we have Paul Ianni from the town of Lincoln, who will be talking about a program that directly supports the investment in agricultural businesses and value-added businesses within their community. So just to give you a little overview of what we're to expect today, we'll have each of the panelists present for their session. If you would like to ask a question, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A question, so you can just click that and type your question in that area, and then we'll field those questions at the end of the session. And then at the very end, we will have a poll question before we wrap up at the end. So without further ado, I would like to present Anna DeMarchi-Meyers, the Agricultural Liaison Officer in Halton Region. Anna, I'll turn it over to you and let you share your screen. Anna just might need to be unmuted as well, like I was, for our background people. If we've learned anything over Zoom the last few months, is there's lots of things to learn each and every time you try to use Zoom. So Anna's just going through the process of getting her screen shared. I think she's unmuted. And I will turn it over to Anna. Great.
Everybody can hear me?
Yeah, that's excellent. Great,
Anna. It's a pleasure. Sorry?
You're good.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And I was asked to talk a little bit about our Halton Agricultural Community Fund. And I'm just going to start off here. And I'm having, there we are. So Halton Region is an upper tier municipality that was established in 1974. And we're part of the Golden Horseshoe. So it's made up of the city of Burlington, the towns of Milton, Halton Hills, and Oakville. And we have a population of over 500,000. We're going to be growing to 1.1 million by 2051. So we have a very large urban population, but we also have a lot of productive agricultural land in Halton Region. So it affords some opportunity, but also some challenges. And we have a varied type of agriculture. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Halton Agricultural Advisory Committee, because the Agricultural Community Development Minister, what we refer to as HAC. And on our HAC committee, we have up to four positions that are citizens at large. We try to get someone that represents the agritourism sector, and usually would like to have at least 2 members at large that are under 35. So we get that perspective, and another member at large. It could be varied. And then we have other positions that are appointed from a variety of organizations, including our Halton Peel Cattlemen's Association, the Halton Soil and Crop Improvement Association. There's 4 members that are appointed from the Halton Region Federation of Agriculture, representative from the Halton Wentworth Fruit and Vegetable Growers. We also have someone from Landscape Ontario in the horticultural trades. And then we also have 2 regional councillors that are appointed to HAC. And then I sit on the committee as staff support along with the regional clerk. Now, the Halton Agricultural Community Fund started back in 1999. When the region formed in 1974, there were agricultural grants that were given out, but sometimes they were subject to budgetary considerations. And in 1999, they decided to start the Halton Agricultural Community Development Fund. And it was to help agricultural organizations that had projects that needed assistance that would support the agricultural sector. And what they did was they tied it in with the regional official plan objectives, some of the goals that we're trying to achieve for the agricultural sector. And they also wanted to promote the sharing of information. So the intake process is pretty simple. We start at the beginning of the year, the first week of January. We put the applications up online and give people a window of approximately at least a month, usually 5 or 6 weeks. We like to close the applications in between sort of the mid and end of February, and that allows us enough time to get checks out to the associations and for them to undertake the projects that they've submitted. And then once those submissions come in, we have a subcommittee that is struck through the committee of HAC, which I shared with you, to review those applications or those proposals. So on the application, we ask for a number of pieces of information because we wanted to make the project or the application process simple and efficient. So we want to know exactly what area municipalities would benefit. In some cases, it's all of the municipalities. Sometimes it's a particular local municipality. Obviously, a project description. We like to see financials for the organization, including how much the project is going to cost and how much they're asking the region to contribute. So there isn't a set formula in terms of cost sharing. And then we ask them to describe how they're going to share their resources or their expertise. And in some cases, we've had organizations that like to collaborate. And then again, as I had mentioned, we ask them to link in with our regional objectives out of our regional official plan and also explain the need for funding. If they have been successful the previous year in getting funding, we'll ask them for how that funding was used. So that's our way of checking in to see how a previous application, how those funds were applied. In the last couple of years, we automated the process and it's made things much easier because we really don't have to change anything. It's automatically on our website and organizations can either write in and send us an email an application, or they can go right online and it's fast and easy. So the questions are short and sweet, easy to fill out. Now, the subcommittee that reviews the applications are made up of our 2 regional councillors, the chair of our Halton Agricultural Advisory Committee, and then we usually have 2 additional members that we would ask to join the subcommittee. We like to make sure, when I was talking about the structure of HAC, that they are varied and they're representing various organizations. And the reason we do that is that on occasion, somebody has to step aside because one of the organizations that they're an appointed member for may have an application in. And so between the 5 of them, they can make some decisions there. So if there's a conflict of interest, they can step aside. Myself as an agricultural liaison officer, I prepare all the materials, but I'm not a voting member. I'm just supportive in terms of, I provide a supportive function for the subcommittee to make their decisions. I should also add that anybody who wants to put in a proposal can come in and provide a short presentation to the subcommittee prior to them reviewing all the proposals. These are a list of some of the projects that we funded to date. So it's not uncommon that we get applications from all of our fall fairs, especially with regards to their ag educational tent. Sometimes there's different aspects they would like us to fund. And so it's a way for them to get some resources to help, considering that we have most of the schools going through the fall fairs, although not this year. We've also had some instances where we were looking for offsetting memberships. So for example, 4-H in Halton region is challenged just because we don't have as many farms as we used to, and we want to engage. And it's great because it's opened the doors and they've got new members that are joining to learn about agriculture and become leaders in our rural communities. We funded things like soil health and compaction studies, rural well water monitoring studies that actually come into the region, and we have some of our source water protection teams that have access to that kind of information. Community garden projects or heritage garden projects. There's something called the Big Crunch, where students in all of the schools will have an apple that they will bite into on a day at a particular time. So we funded things like that, as well as dairy education and the Fresh Food Box program in terms of supporting local food. But we're not limited to this. You can be as creative as you want. And so we've tried to keep the category very broad to be open-minded about the kinds of proposals that we'll receive. I also wanted to mention that there's a couple of other funding opportunities that happen, but they're outside of the Agricultural Community Development Fund. So we have something called the Halton Region Community Investment Fund, and coming up in 2021, there's going to be $2.3 million. And this is really available for a lot of our not-for-profit agencies. And sometimes there's a local food aspect that can support agriculture. So it's not exclusive, but there are proposals. And so there are some associations that can also apply to these streams. And there's 2 streams. There's one that has a deadline for early November. And those are shorter term initiatives that are up to $30,000 for 1 year. And then category 2 are longer term projects that can go up to 3 years of funding. So that's another venue that our organizations can look into. And what I also haven't mentioned is that we have a Halton Region Federation of Agriculture coordinator grant. So we do provide some funding to help our local Federation of Agriculture, and they're really instrumental because we're constantly in communication with them. They have a newsletter, so it's a great way that we can disseminate information, and likewise they give us information and perspective as well. So those are just some of the initiatives that we have related to the Agricultural Community Development Fund and some of the other funding opportunities. And I guess the key take-home messages would be that funding is available to support the agriculture, and you can do it in a number of different ways. You develop a starting point. So regardless of how big that fund is, you can always have a starting point. And if you find that the fund is oversubscribed, go back and you can put together a business case for increasing the amount of funding and determine the criteria that'll advance the goals and objectives you're trying to achieve with the agricultural sector. Try to find a process that's really fast and easy and efficient to administer. It saves a lot of staff time and a lot of time on the side of the proponents who are putting in the applications. Try to be flexible, and that way you can get a whole range of proposals that would be applicable to the fund. And then don't be afraid to reap the awards and celebrate the successes with that. with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carolyn for our next speaker.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. That was really interesting to hear, you know, some funding specifically aimed at the agriculture community, and then that second stream that's aimed at some of those broader nonprofit groups. I think that's quite innovative in agriculture, and I know Halton's been at this for a really long time, and it's neat to see what has been done and then it continues. You know, it's sometimes these things get started and they don't continue. To see that sort of support for that long of a period of time is really great. So thank you, Anna. Now I am going to invite Stephanie Slaman. Stephanie is the Business Development Officer in the Regional District of Central Okanagan, and she's going to be presenting on some of the agriculture and agritourism support programs that they offer in British Columbia. So we're so happy to have you here, and we're really looking forward to getting a little window into BC and what's happening there and how you're supporting that sector.
Excellent.
Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, everyone, for joining us virtually today. I always like to start my presentations by quickly and appropriately recognizing that I get to live and work on the traditional territories and unceded territories of the Syilx Okanagan peoples. It's a beautiful area of BC. So as mentioned, my name is Stephanie Slaman. I'm one of the business development officers with the Regional District of Central Okanagan. Is Economic Development Commission. So the COEDC is the service of the regional district, and we're located in the interior of BC. And our service region includes the District of Lake Country, the City of Kelowna, the City of West Kelowna, a unique and special partnership with West Bank First Nation, the District of Peachland, and the two unincorporated electoral areas of East and West. We provide economic development services to over 217,000 residents and 13,000 businesses with a very small team of just 4 full-time staff and 4 part-time contractors. So we're the region's primary business resource, and we provide a host of services and resources across all sectors. And much of our activities fall into 3 programming streams. So we have business retention and enhancement, investment attraction, and coordination and connection. So as the economic development practitioners on the call today will know, we're connectors and opportunity finders. And so for our agriculture sector, that is a whole host of services and programming that we provide. So we have a spectrum of activities focused on the agriculture sector that really start on the existing capacity of our region and then build from there. And I cannot stress enough how important business retention and enhancement as an approach and perspective have supported all of our programming and activities. So this has, of course, shifted over the years with what we focus on, promote, and conduct in our annual activities. And currently, it's supported with a dedicated consultant who works at about a 0.5 FTE. And then, of course, myself as the business development officer, I support that and have quite a background in agriculture, which is more of an enhancement to our programming rather than a dedicated hiring focus for the region, because we have that dedicated consultant supporting the sector. So in the past, the dedicated resource has been more of a technical support, although right now our current focus has been more on public relations and communications and outreach to operators. So that looks like storytelling with over 25 visits to sites and operators directly in a one-on-one context, as well as 2 to 5 events and workshops through the year. And then those topics would be decided based on either identified gaps and needs or specific requests from the sector. So we're very connected and collaborate strongly with our agriculture ecosystem here. We work closely with industry associations and organizations, both formal and informal. We work very closely with our federal and provincial partners and extension services in the region. And we've expanded our support and collaboration with the local food security network here. It's a little bit less established, but has been expanding. Of course, COVID has added some additional community interest in that area. And while the EDC staff doesn't specifically sit on any of the agriculture advisory councils for our municipal service region, we do work closely with the planning staff that support those advisory councils and with the provincial agrologist that does sit on each of those advisory councils. So our services can be referred to operators through those channels. So broadly, some of our initiatives and activities include, of course, promotion with supporting the Buy BC brands, wine and farm routes for those taste trails, programming and activities such as outreach, toolkits, events and workshops as mentioned, and business-to-business support and resourcing, as well as expert advice. And then, of course, policy development and reporting out. So we support a lot of our colleagues within the municipal planning and other departments, as well as producing key resources and products that are posted onto our website. But specifically, our agriculture and agritourism programming started in 2012 and has continued just to 2018 as a dedicated program in its first iteration, although now it's more on a one-on-one as requested service that can be provided. So the Central Okanagan has a long history of agriculture excellence, and the agriculture sector is a significant driver for our local economy. While viticulture is a significant subsector and relevant to the agritourism component that we saw as an opportunity, we do have a wide array of agriculture producers and agri-food producers in the region that we're very proud of. So in 2012, when the agritourism program was being developed, operators in the region were facing challenges common to a lot of other regions and agriculture communities, including higher production and land costs, declining commodity prices, which impacted the traditional farming model, especially with our orchardists. And many of our farm operators were supplementing their farm income with off-farm employment. So we were exploring as the COEDC, how could we support or advise operators to leverage new opportunities? And that allowed us through the research and information gathering as we approach this problem to really look at the trend of increased interest in rural areas from the tourism perspective, and looking specifically at on-farm experiences for tourism visitors to the region as they look to escape maybe their urban center, or even if they're living in a more rural area, look to see what opportunities and experiences are available around them. So we recognize that other agricultural operators in other jurisdictions were very successful with implementing agritourism experiences, and had used this to diversify on-farm diversity and strength and profitability for operators. So in 2012, we conducted a specific report looking at this opportunity tailored to our region, and the assets we had in the region were a very bountiful and interesting tourism destination. And of course, being nestled in the Okanagan Valley, we have lots of hiking trails, a beautiful lake for water sports, and have been seen as a tourism destination in other contexts and more traditional sectors of experiential development for tourists well before focusing on agritourism. And then, of course, with the subsector of wine tourism, this seemed a very natural and perfect extension. So we looked at whether farm operators really needed any support in taking advantage of this opportunity, and it was decided that they really did, and that this would be helpful. So we, through 2012 to 2015, the COEDC developed a training program of sorts that was based on a 5-month timeline for verified operators to build capacity and validate their on-farm tourism product that they would be providing to tourists. So the program was done in a speaker series format, and then as well provided one-on-one business coaching and mentorship covering topics like marketing and social media, financing and pricing for experiences, on-farm safety for guests, and included a custom agritourism business planning guide that was developed in-house through a collaboration. So the training was provided entirely by the COEDC staff, and really with the goal of enabling operators who had completed the program to start offering an experience immediately on their farm. And then, as mentioned, we didn't completely redevelop the wheel. We worked with the University of Tennessee to develop that programming guide that we used to focus the program, and then tailored it to our jurisdictional differences. So the outcome of the program was we had over 15 operators move through in that 2012 to 2015 timeframe. Many of them still have very successful agritourism experiences that lots of tourists get to enjoy every year. It's of course a little bit different this year under the COVID context, but we're very happy with that program and the success that our operators have seen with that little bit of support and facilitation. So we continue to review, modify, and adapt the program, sharing best practices, and I cannot stress enough that it's really about looking to other jurisdictions that have had success and sharing and reaching out to your colleagues and developing those best practices together. So thank you very much.
That was great, Stephanie. That's really interesting to see such a deliberate approach into supporting, and you picked the area, you did the research, and then figured out how to support these businesses to make that transition. So that's really neat to see. I know in Ontario with COVID and some of the restrictions, we have seen more demand at our agriculture and those agritourism type operations than they've ever seen. I'm happy to cover the area right around the Greater Toronto area, and they've literally never been as busy as they have been this year, and with the added, making sure everybody's safe and those sorts of things. And often they're not offering nearly as many agritourism type opportunities as they had in the past. But that's great. I have lots of details written down as you were talking there. So thank you so much for sharing, Stephanie. And we'll come back with some questions afterwards. And I'm sure there's some in the Q&A section as well.
Fantastic.
Okay,
thank you.
Now I will invite Paul Ianni to join us. Paul is the Economic Development Officer with the town of Lincoln in the beautiful region of Niagara. And Paul's going to be sharing about their community improvement plan and what they're doing there, as well as a really innovative project they're doing to support agriculture and technology. So I will turn it over to you, Paul, to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, and just thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Carolyn. So my name is Paul Ianni. I'm the Economic Development Officer for the town of Lincoln, and I'm going to, as Carolyn mentioned, be chatting about economic development and agriculture and focus specifically on our rural areas community improvement plan. So just a little bit about the town of Lincoln. As Carolyn mentioned, we are in Niagara, so West Niagara, a rural community of about 24,000 people. We're situated between St. Catharines and Grimsby in Hamilton. Lincoln is made up of the communities of Beamsville, Vineland, Jordan, Camden, Tintern, and Rockaway. So we're a community of many communities. And we're bounded by Lake Ontario to the north and the Niagara Escarpment to the south, although some of our municipal boundaries do extend above the escarpment. We do have a fairly diversified economy with agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism being our main sectors. And when it comes to manufacturing, a lot of our manufacturing companies here do actually focus on agriculture, greenhouse construction, precision agriculture, and things like that. And over 60% of our community does fall under special land use planning policies such as the Greenbelt and the Niagara Escarpment plans. And while we are very proud of this, it obviously does force us to think a little bit differently when it comes to economic development. So in terms of a quick agricultural overview, our goal for the town here is to be a center of excellence for agriculture. Lincoln has some of the highest number of farms in all of Niagara, supporting over 3,500 jobs. Our farms do account for 13% in gross farm receipts in the Golden Horseshoe, which really equates to about $253 million. And Lincoln is a major grower of grapes and associated value-added agriculture. So just some farm operation numbers here: over 4,500 acres in grapes, 1,600 acres in peaches, 4,500 acres. 450 acres in pears, and over 9 million square feet in floral culture. So some of the largest in Ontario. We grow a lot of the flowers, and we do have some vegetable greenhouse operations as well. In addition, tourism is a big driver of our local economy here. We have over 50 wineries in the community, distilleries, and a large brewery, which really equates to over 1,700 jobs in the craft beverage manufacturing sector. So in regards to our economic development strategy in 2019, we did develop an economic development strategy focusing on how we can grow our economy here. And the key themes from that is promoting an open for business message, focusing on business retention and expansion, innovation and leadership, and attracting new investment. And of course, our sectors of focus being agriculture, food and beverage, tourism, and advanced manufacturing. And this actually led us to do a tourism strategy, which we actually completed in June of this year. And the goal of that being, grow our local economy through increased tourism marketing and having a larger say in overall destination management. And now to the crux of what I'm here to chat about here today is our rural areas community improvement plan. So we did this in conjunction with our economic development strategy and really identifying how we can attract investment, encourage value-added agricultural uses in the town's rural areas. Goal obviously being, grow our economy, create jobs through strategic incentives. And the town does recognize that our greatest opportunity for economic growth is through value-added agriculture and on-farm diversified uses, so mainly agritourism. We do have a slate of incentive programs to achieve these goals, and from our knowledge, it is the first in Ontario, or first in Niagara, to incentivize the rural areas. So what do some of those programs look like? Well, we do have a number of them, and the first one that we look at is the Signage and Landscape Improvement Grant. And this is basically up to a maximum of $5,000 in matching grant that really is identified to increase visitation through signage and landscape improvements. In addition, we have our Building Restoration Renovation Improvement Grant, and this is a maximum up to $25,000. And the idea here is to leverage private sector investment in external or internal renovations and improvements. A development charge reduction grant up to a maximum of $60,000 to reduce development charges to help facilitate some of that development. In addition, our planning application and building permit fees grant. So this is a maximum of $7,500 on planning application fees, or $15,000 on building permit fees. And of course, this is to reduce fees to encourage development as well. One of our more popular ones being the tax increment financing grant, and this is a maximum of 80% of property taxes reimbursed for an 8 to 10 year period. So pre-development versus post-development, you get that back up to a maximum of 80%. And lastly, our feasibility study grant. So this is a maximum of $5,000, and really is to promote studies to determine if existing agricultural buildings and or land can be converted or readapted or reused for value-added purposes. So what are some of our success stories? Well, first and foremost is Bench Brewery. So Bench Brewery is a wonderful brewery we have in our community here. They took an old school and really adapted it and re-envisioned it into a brewery. So they did apply for a rural area signage and landscape improvement grant, as well as our development charge reduction grant. And in the middle there, you see a picture of an old church. So they acquired an old church on the north end of their property and are going to be turning it into an event space. But for COVID, they obviously re-envision this as a drop-off and pickup point for individuals purchasing beer. So you could make an appointment online, buy some beer, and you pick it up at the front of the church there. In addition, Cave Springs Vineyard. So this is a new vineyard here in the community that actually applied for the rural area signage and landscaping improvement grant, as well as our DC reduction and building restoration grant. So they took this old barn and re-envisioned it into a winery, a tasting room, some event space, and of course they applied for some of the landscaping and improvement grants. So some huge success on some of our rural area CIP. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention as well our Agritech Hackathons. So back in 2019, the town of Lincoln developed the idea of really bringing tech and agriculture together to help incentivize and bring some next level thinking when it comes to agriculture in the community. So we did engage our local incubator hub called Spark Niagara to help empower this event. So my understanding, Ontario's first ever Agritech Hackathon right here in the town of Lincoln, bringing together individuals, businesses, and educational institutions for a 3-day event to find solutions to challenges for agriculture, horticulture, and ecotourism sectors. And again, this identifies current challenges in the agricultural industry to foster some of that innovation and collaboration. Challenge questions, themes from last year are really around soil erosion and depletion, disease and pests, infrastructure, ecotourism and sustainability, and production and environment. So the 2020 hackathon obviously is going to be taking place virtually online or entirely online, taking place from November 6th to the 8th, so not this weekend, but the following weekend. Because we have gone online, it's allowed us to really go to the international market. So we have 180 hackers from around the world participating in this 3-day event. Cash prizes to be won, and of course, it's been recognized by the Major League Hacking for their 2020-2021 season, which has really allowed us to propel this internationally. And the overarching themes for this is innovations for the future in Lincoln's agricultural sector, focused on driving economic recovery, youth engagement, and food security. So with that, Carolyn, I turn it back to you, but I do appreciate your time today, everyone, and look forward to some questions.
Thanks so much for sharing, Paul. That's really interesting to see, you know, a community the size of Lincoln that's, you know, right in their official plan is define the be a center of excellence for agriculture, and then those policies that you've started to roll out to support that. And then the Agritech Hackathon that's neat to see all these pieces going together. And I think it just talks about there's a lot of different ways you can support the agriculture community, and you guys are starting to definitely show different tactics to do that. So that's wonderful. So I'll ask if our panelists can all come back and show your faces, and we just have a few questions to go through. And to start with, I was wondering whether you could talk about how you measure the impact of your project or your fund or your initiative that you're doing. You know, Anna touched on a little bit around the building a business case to support maybe further investment if you didn't have enough dollars when you started a fund like she started. But how do you measure your project, and how do you report on it to sort of make others aware of what you're doing and what the success is? So maybe I'll start with you, Anna, since you were our first speaker today. You have to unmute, Anna.
There we go. Sorry about that. I guess the benefit for us, I mean, overall, we do look at the fund just to see whether it's oversubscribed, and over the years we have made increases to the fund, but the actual projects we leave up to the subcommittee, because they can be very creative and they've changed, and so we never know what we're going to get. So it's really the subcommittee that would sit there and evaluate. And in a lot of cases, it's a question, you know, it's hard to compare, you know, apples with oranges, because the diversity of projects is so great, and they all have different kinds of impacts. So I think the take-home message is, if we can enable the project, sometimes the subcommittees will actually find that there's projects that are worthwhile and they want to support all of them, and what they might do is choose to allot a, you know, 80% so that 2 projects could be covered, so it still fits within the fund. So that's another way that they can do it, because you're not limited to a 50-50 share or a 70-30. So there's some leeway there.
Great, thank you. Stephanie, do you want to talk about how you measure your success?
Sure. So specifically with our agriculture and agritourism program, it was a lot about interest and measuring numbers. So we reported out in our quarterly reporting that covers all of our activities, and then again at the annual cycle, we report our indicators and key performance indicators. And it was about the number of workshops we had promoting the new service and the new training, and then the number of interests we had in the program from a broad set, and then specifically the number of participants that took part in the program. We did have, you know, one operator who didn't successfully complete the program, so making sure that we did an exit interview specifically around what that was and what were some of the choices around deciding to leave the program, and so that we could utilize that for any changes that needed to be made. And then of course the total number of successful operators. And then now looking back after almost 5 years, now being 2020 to 2015 with our last specific graduate under that first programming stream in its initial iteration, we can look at how many operators are still providing that service or have continued to enhance their agritourism experiential offerings. So that's really allowed us to holistically look at the program from a number of different intersection points, and then modify or change as needed. So we take that approach with a lot of our programming, and it's as with all metrics or methodologies, it's about understanding what your purpose is going in and then finding an appropriate measure for recognizing success in the way that your community deems it. So thank you.
And I think we've learned, if I've learned anything over the years, is if you can identify some of those things up front, it's so much easier to do that measurement. If you have the plan or have the project and then you're trying to measure what the success rates are, it's quite hard, right? So trying to get some of that ahead of time, and then, as you said, go back and adjust and see what needs to change, it makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Debbie. How about you, Paul, with your projects?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. So our rural area CIP is fairly new in the sense that we really brought it online in 2019, but fully online in 2020. So a little bit new in that sense, but we have seen some initial pickup and interest amongst some of our value-added agriculture and tourism enterprises here in the community. So from our perspective, how we're going to measure it is interest in the programs. How much actual money that council has set aside that we're getting out the door to help incentivize some of this development, and in addition, sort of looking at how much new business we can bring online, how much value-added agriculture we can bring online, and our reporting structure is at this point sort of yearly back to council, especially around the budget time when we're setting budgets for the next fiscal. And so at this point, we've only come back just once with a preliminary update, but in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be looking to come back, to council with a 2020 update as well. So really trying to, identify how much money is flowing out the door, interest, and whether or not, because we do have 6 sort of programs available, whether or not, in next year we can put more money into a specific one and sort of dial another one back, depending on some of that interest.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, whether you target certain streams depending on what you want accomplished in your municipality.
Yeah, totally. And right now for this year, we've opened everything up, but in next year, do we sort of dial one back and increase another one? So good question.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. The other question, and some of you've touched on this a little bit, but what has sort of changed over the years as you've implemented these projects? What have you had to change or adjust as a result of whether the measurement or some of the feedback you've gotten as you've gone along? This time, I'll start with you this time, Paul. Yours is quite new, so you're not there yet.
So ours is still quite new, so we're not there yet. But again, that I guess that focus back on some of the metrics. If one program is more popular than the other one, then maybe we'll dial that one back and promote one of the other programs. So at this point, still new, but look forward to participating in next year's webinar to talk about the success of this program.
How about you, Stephanie?
Well, I imagine just from some of the dates, people have picked up that the program in its original initiation in 2012 is not offered in the same way today. So that's really the biggest change that we've seen, is while there was a lot of interest based on our market size here and the number of operators that we expected to have interest in making this transition. Initially, that interest has shifted a lot, and now it's, for us, has moved along the capacity spectrum, as it could be seen, in supporting those operators as they expand and grow. So what are the next challenges after having an initial experience that you build out on your property? What are you then being faced with? So our operators have come back to us and spoken a lot about enhancing their social media and marketing. And then particularly in BC, this is a bit unique. We have a land use regime for agriculture. So it's the Agriculture Land Reserve that was initiated in 1974 to protect arable and highest and best use agriculture land. So for our region here in the central Okanagan, that land regime covers 9% of our land base. So when we look at what that means as far as allowable activities on the land, it really does provide some restrictions, especially moving from traditional agriculture production into offering more experiential offerings on your farm that are maybe not seen as being highest and best use of agriculture land. So that in and of itself has really led us to shift into ensuring that we're offering our operators the best advice when they're building out their experiences, and doing so within that structure, and ensuring that as our region grows and develops, the interface challenges that can come from some of our pockets of deemed agriculture land being surrounded on almost all sides by development or other land uses, causing those interface challenges. So that's some of the nuance of how the program has changed for us.
Right. And I think a lot of people in Ontario in the greater or the Golden Horseshoe area can relate to some of the things you've talked about, because we have similar type, very similar type situation. So Anna, I'll let you answer, and then we'll move on to questions from our participants.
I was going to say, because of the structure of the Agricultural Community Development Fund, tying it in with our official plan objectives, I think that we've been able to keep it very broad and keep it relevant. Right now we're going through our regional official plan review, and certainly there's going to be broadened permissions, you know, on-farm diversified uses. So it'll be a chance to connect with that, but I'm not sure that we're going to need to change the terms of the fund. And so that allows us a lot of flexibility and makes it easier from our end in terms of the kinds of applications that we may get.
Yeah, in a way, by allowing it to be as flexible as you've really allowed it to adapt depending on the need from your community, because it's an application-based process. Okay, just a few questions from our participants. We have one that I'll put out to all three of you. Are there provincial policy requirements that you feel could be strengthened to better support your economic development objectives? So, Anna, do you mind if I start with you?
Right now, because we are going through the regional official plan review, I think there's tremendous opportunity with on-farm diversified uses and helping some of our businesses. They're looking for those kinds of opportunities. They are being very creative. It's great to go into some other regions to see on-farm breweries, on-farm meaderies and cideries. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. So I think there's tremendous opportunity, and we need to find ways of being able to support that.
Great, thank you. Paul?
Yes, thanks, Carolyn, and great question. So similar to what Anna mentioned, not necessarily provincial policy, but more so the regional official plan in our own town of Lincoln plan as well, to focus on some on-farm diversified uses when it comes to accommodations. So right now, both the regional official plan and our official plan sort of says you can have a bed and breakfast on the farm up to a maximum of well, 6 rooms. And we're looking to do something a little bit more, go to the next level. So when it comes to glamping, for example, or you know, some sort of cabins on some of our vineyards and stuff like that. So really, we're talking to the region. They're undergoing an official plan amendment as well, or a review, and we're looking to sort of see if we can, you know, add some additional on-farm diversified uses when it comes to accommodations. So great question, something we're definitely working on.
I was just kidding. For the Ontario people, don't forget this guide. This is a guide OMAFRA has developed on guidelines for permitted uses, and you could see it was within reach of my desk, my home office here. Stephanie, from a BC perspective, I mean, you don't have the provincial policy statement we have as a framework in Ontario, but are there things that would support the policy, or some policy requirements could support economic development?
Absolutely. So I'm sure, as with all of the other jurisdictions, COVID has led to a lot of outreach for us and connectivity with our business community in all sectors, so including agriculture. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we received as far as that provincial connectivity and policy direction was around procurement wayfinding for operators in our region, to ensuring that wherever possible, we're creating pathways or capacity for procuring local, and local along you know, the broad expanse of what that can mean. So local, either regionally, local provincially, or local nationally. When, you know, we're hearing about, you know, maybe direct awards that have been presented in the news, and operators in our region are saying, well, we have the capacity to do that here. How would we find out about a bid opportunity like that? So that's something that for the Economic Development Commission, where a significant part of our role here is ensuring that we're making those connections and pathfinding for our businesses, and ensuring that they have those opportunities to grow, especially in such direct procurement ways where it is a policy decision. It's a decision by senior levels of government about how they're going to open up those opportunities. That, I think, is an area that we're looking to see how we can support our operators in the best way moving forward, especially as we see those senior levels of government looking to support regions and municipalities and the economy broadly with specific funding under this COVID context. Thank you.
And for another webinar and another day, Anna can do a whole talk on local food procurement through a municipal system.
Absolutely.
We have about 2 more minutes left for questions, so I'm going to shoot a few at you that have come through. Stephanie, you mentioned any verified farm business could take part of the training. What's in BC, what verifies, you know, what is a verified farm, I guess?
Oh, so that, you know, there's of course official terms for tax purposes, or in our case, agriculture land reserve. But for us in that program specifically, it was, you know, when you're opening up a new program, we needed to define eligibility. So some of our eligibility was just that you had been in operation as, you know, a producer of a provincially defined agriculture product, that you were in good standing, that you still had, you know, your tax status for farm purposes. If you had any farm gate sales, you know, what was the level, and looking at ways that we could make sure that we were offering the program to individuals that were intentional in their reason for participating.
Great, thank you. Paul, there's a question on how do you promote the Agritech Hackathon?
Yeah, so we've, as I mentioned, we partnered with our local incubator hub to help empower the event. We do have our agritechhackathon.ca website, so if you're interested, please go. You can see results from last year and how to sort of participate in this year. In addition, we've really been promoting on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. And in addition, we've been using Spark through their networks of the various innovation hubs throughout Ontario to help promote to the secondary students in the communities. And so a various, you know, multitude sort of, you know, communications plan. And there's obviously opportunities for growth. I mean, we got to get it out there more, but you know, this year we're quite happy where we're at with it.
Great. Well, I'd like to apologize to the participants because we haven't got through every single question that came to us, but I might ask, one of them, Stephanie, is around whether you would be able to share the University of Tennessee Agri-Tourism Resource Guide, as well as maybe the link to your guide that you have on your website might be helpful in the chat. And so at this time, I just want to thank Anna and Paul and Stephanie. So thank you so much for sharing how your work, you're supporting the agriculture community from your perspective, whether regionally or in a municipality like Paul is in your business development role, Stephanie. So thank you very much for sharing that information. I think every time we have one of these presentations, we learn a little nugget more of what could be done, and often it's not overly complicated. There's lots of great tactics to support agriculture. So I'll turn it back to Elyssa to wrap up our webinar today.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to quickly invite our attendees to fill out a quick poll. I promise it's just one question, very simple. Only asking because this helps inform the work that we do moving forward. So the poll should be up right now. I'll give everyone about 10-15 seconds to respond. And while you're filling in your polls, I just want to say a special thank you to our moderator, Carolyn. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much. It was a very great presentation. I learned a lot and really appreciate the time that you took out of your day to put presentations together and also give very thoughtful responses. So that's it. I'll shut off the poll. And that's it for today's webinar. Thank you to everyone attended and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.